I'm looking at a piece of property and visibly I see some PVC pipe sticking out of the ground. What do you think might have been going on there before?
Well, probably an active remediation system. You'll see, depending on the type of remediation that's being done, there could be PVC pipes with vent slits cut in them. We're venting off organics that are sitting on the groundwater. Some chemicals will float, and so it's easier to remediate that way, but that is one easy telltale sign that, oh, there was something found on this property. Sometimes you'll see monitoring well cover, which is like a 3-inch diameter plate on the ground. You're just walking and you see it. Those are also a good sign that someone has put well down into groundwater to test it. They do look different than our normal drinking wells. And usually on the cap, it actually gives you a little bit of information. If you have really good eyes, you can bend down and see it. But that is one way to know that there has either been a phase 2, some testing done on the site, or even an ongoing phase 3, active remediation. Some of those, I know on one property that I dealt with, is about a 30-year process of venting organics that are floating on groundwater from historical World War II chemical usage.
Some of the chemicals in the past that were buried or went into the groundwater will eventually, by what we call natural attenuation, will disappear. They'll become non-contaminants. Other chemicals, like for instance dry cleaning chemicals, solvents, they must be remediated because they will not ever go anywhere.
Chemicals have a half-life, is what we call it, which is the amount of time it takes before it biodegrades, breaks down into no longer harmful constituents. Solvents, particularly things like dry cleaning solvents, which were a big buzz in the state several years ago, do not have a short half-life. Chlorinated solvents that we use for dry cleaning, that we use in electric transformers historically, not currently, are all chlorinated solvents, and they do not break down in hundreds of years and are toxic to humans. So those have to be remediated. You can't leave them to sit because they get in our drinking water.
If a site has been remediated and given a clean bill of health, what kind of assurances can I have as a buyer of that property to be able to know that it is clean?
The reporting process that is regulated by the states and again could be also regulated federally can give some inclination about what has been done in the past and if the government has given it a clean bill of health. So all of that would be discovered in the phase 1 process, and if it was reported, and it is legally supposed to be reported, so hopefully the environmental company that worked with the previous owner would have that information reported into the files and into the database that would come from the state or from one of the other databases that we look for when we do the phase 1 assessment.
You'd also want to make sure that either with your bank, your financial institution, you pick a reputable environmental company. And how would you know that? I mean, because everybody says we're great and we do everything above board, but the things that you can look for, both word of mouth, their track record, who has used them in the past, has there ever been any problems? I know for ACT, again, I've been there 15 years, we are a contractor for DEP. They themselves have chosen to hire us and sign contracts. We are a contractor for the state, for the Department of Transportation. So those things speak to our reputation and our belief in doing things 100% correct, by the book, meaning the federal regulations and the state regulations, and if they don't, your assurances are waning at that point. Sometimes you're going to get what you pay for if you just want the quickest and the cheapest. You need to do a little research to make sure that it's the right type of company, because your investment in your property is costing you quite a bit of money.
That leads me to ask, what is your general response time if I contact you and say, hey, I need a phase 1 audit to be performed on the property that I'm looking at, I'm under due diligence, what kind of timeline could we expect as a buyer of property?
Generally, we try to get our reports turned around within 2 weeks. The standard, the ASTM actually gives us a standard to go by, and for a smaller commercial piece of property, 20 days, and that's calendar days, is the standard for the turnaround time. Large ranches often take more time, and so that would be understandable, but yes, generally we would be able to complete a phase 1 within 3 weeks.
Very good. I go out to the property and I see there's tires and old cars or trucks or tractors or solid waste type things that don't seem to be environmentally too big of a concern, but what do I need to be looking at or thinking about as a buyer of this property?
I would start by saying, don't ever assume that it shouldn't be a concern. My experience has been that where you see things that are piled up, the things that maintained them are also piled up. So the hydraulic oil that you used in the tractor has got buckets and they might have been turned over. But when you see them, that if you haven't already talked to your bank about it, that is right away, okay, we need to make sure we do environmental assessment of this property. You already know it's one you want. I mean, if you're just looking, that may be enough for you to go, I don't know how well maintained this was. But again, I think that's pretty common. You're gonna find stuff left on a property. Go ahead and approach an environmental company and find out how much is it gonna cost, how quickly can I get a phase 1, because I see a lot of things left on the property. They ran tractors, they have tires. Tires are made of vulcanized rubber. What's coming off the rubber? I mean, there are so many chemicals that impact us on a daily basis that people don't understand. That's why you need to talk to an environmental person, because your everyday homeowner, they don't know. I mean, they just grab the ammonia and the bleach and they're great apart, so let's put them together. They don't understand they're making a bomb. But when you talk to an environmental person, they walk out and they see the tractor and the tires and the buckets that they use, and our first thought is, oh, we're gonna go and need to look for petroleum because they have a tractor. They put fuel in this tractor, they maintain this tractor, they had hydraulic oil, they had diesel, could be off-road diesel, could be on-road diesel, lots of things. And then, the components within the petroleum themselves can be toxic. So it's not even just the original, it's the byproduct and the breakdown products of the chemicals that hit the ground. So there are just so many varied impacts that come from just life that anytime you're going to buy property, it's always a good idea to check it out environmentally before you take on a new headache.
We had one property that had arsenic contamination above what FDEP standard allowed, and hundreds of acres had to be scraped 6 inches down, in some areas 2 feet, completely removed and replaced with clean soil. That was very expensive, but the buyer deemed that it was worth the value of the property was worth the differential of the cost. So those are all things to consider. Sometimes you want to buy contaminated property because the value is huge. And in Florida, as we know, the values are going way up for many, many areas. So just because it's contaminated doesn't mean bad things, depending on values and what the current market will allow.
We do have remediation technologies that allow us to clean up most things. So whether you have contamination in your drinking well, or you have a pond on the property and you want to stock it with bass so you can fish every day. I mean, current technology allows us to clean up a lot of our mistakes, in the past. And as we continue to develop as a society, we create chemicals faster than we know how to clean them up or know their total impact. So there's always going to be concern for doing that. but we can get it cleaned up. And we do find many buyers will choose to go through phase 3 because they want the property.
What type of methods do you use? Do you use biological? Do you just scrape soil and send it away to some
Absolutely.
incinerator? Or what do
Yes
you
to
do?
all of the above. We can do what's known as in situ biological remediation, where we will take, believe it or not, another non-hazardous type of chemical and pump it into the ground, or have you till it into the soil, and it has bacteria in it that like to eat the chemical we're trying to get rid of. Organics is a great way to do that. So petroleum. You can put the chemical in the ground, let the bacteria start eating away at the organics. They eventually die, but they've eaten the organic and removed it from the soil. Sometimes, in the case of arsenic, your least expensive route, believe it or not, or definitely your fastest method of remediation, is to remove the soil. Just totally remove it, put new clean soil down. How we dispose of the contaminated is all governed under federal regulations for waste disposal and chemical waste disposal. Some go to a landfill, some can be incinerated. It just depends on what the contamination was. Groundwater, sometimes we actually remove the groundwater. We'll pump the groundwater off, out of the ground, put it through a treatment system, and then we are able to release it right back down. So we don't have any permanent impact to our water levels. We're just pulling it out, running it through carbon cells, cleaning up everything that was in it, and then we dispose of the carbon cell that has all of the contamination in it, so that your groundwater or your drinking water is now safe. And then again, through the process, we're always communicating with the buyer, the homeowner or the person, to make sure they know what's going on, because this is a major decision on buying property.
And sometimes that process can take years. And we look at the budgeting, what you want to spend, and take a look at all the different technologies and make a decision based on the budget concerns. And sometimes there's no options except one, but those are all the things that we consider and pursue.
My name is Ashley Shive.
And I'm Floyd Graves. We're with ACT. You can reach us at www.a-c-t.com or visit thelandjournal.net.